Hello, everyone. My name is Dynahlee Padilla. I'm an alumna of SUNY New Paltz from 2019, and I'm a freelance writer. And today I have Carmen Mojica with us from 2007, and she's here to share her story and give us some perspective. So please introduce yourself when you can.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Carmen Mojica. I graduated in 2007 and I had a Black Studies major and television and radio productions major. Right now what I'm doing is I work with in the area of reproductive health and justice, specifically focusing on birth justice. So that's the main focus of my work and has been the focus of my work for quite some time. And yeah, I think that that's the most that I could say about that.
Okay, wonderful. So, how did you get from having that major into reproductive health in the medical space, and just explain that a little bit for us.
Oh yeah, no, definitely, totally. So I'm actually glad that I get to talk on this particular platform because it was because of SUNY Newports that I got into reproductive health. So in the Black Studies department, there was a class taught. There was a class that was called the Black Woman, and it was taught by Dr. Margaret Wade Lewis, who passed away a couple years ago. And in that class, we talked about Black women's health and well-being, and we also talked about midwives. And it was the first time that I had heard folks talking about midwifery um, in the college, at least in the college setting. So like that definitely sparked my interest. And then I during my time at New Paltz, I was part of the poetry club. And through being exposed to some of my friends in the poetry club, I got exposed to other clubs. And I actually, for my own personal like work, I had become interested in learning about my reproductive system. So it was really like eye-opening because I got to go to a red tent event with FMLA. I don't know if they still have FMLA in New Paltz now. So like it was all like this exposure to that, having conversations with like friends, and then also and with people that I was cool with in college. And then um that coupled with like my friends in college were also very like activists and advocates, and I already came into college with that. So um the reason why I say that New Paltz is the reason why I even got into the field is because it was kind of like it was a space where I was exposed to all of these things. And being a Black Studies major was very healing for me, as especially as a Black Dominican woman, because when I got to college, was I was not proud to be Black, and that's because of like the way in which Dominicans are raised, especially first generation. We don't get racialized. We just kind of have to learn by being in the United States. And so being in the Black Studies major helped me to like heal that anti-Blackness that I was internalizing enough so that I can get past whatever, like as you probably understand, like when you have trauma in your life or you have like you're internalizing hate, it's hard to like be able to see forward because you're still stuck in yourself. So I definitely, man, I loved New Paltz. This is the best 4.5 years of my life by far. Like in my 20s, if I look at my 20s, Newport's was the best. And I will always be grateful for the Black Studies department specifically, for who I am becoming.
That's dope. So it looks like some of your experience at New Paltz, of course, like shaped your identity. And I hope that for many people who had positive experiences at New Paltz, also that it shaped their identity. Because that was definitely my case too. Like just being, as you're talking about, being exposed to different places, different people, different clubs, and that sort of, different courses in your case that like inspired you to get on this like other journey of different interests to start your career. So you mentioned 4.5 years. Is there any reason, some people take 3 years, some people take 5 years, some people study abroad, do it again, whatever the case is, that everyone's trajectory might be different, might not be the traditional quote unquote 4 years. So in your case, sorry for the noise, I don't know what that is. In your case, for those 4.5 years, like what happened in between, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, no, totally. So me taking 4.5 years was literally just because I had two majors.
Okay, makes sense.
So I had to take the extra semester to finish up
Hmm.
the majors. Like there was no other reason. And I also didn't want to take like 5 credit course because like I said, I pledged for a sorority and I was very involved on campus. And so for me, at least at the time, it was important to balance both my academics and also like because my academic like what I experienced outside the classroom was probably just as, if not more important in some cases than what I experienced in the classroom. So um yeah, it was just because it took a little longer to finish both majors.
Yeah, I mean, I know some people who've done double majors, even triple majors, on top of what you're saying, being in a sorority, having, maybe three jobs on and off campus, and just you're trying to strike a balance. And I think everything you're saying is key. Like, your pace, you did what you had to do so you could find that balance. And double majoring means you have multiple skill sets now for the workforce. So kudos to you for doing that. And I'm also wondering then, from your moment at New Paltz and being exposed to then starting your career, like what exactly do you do in your career? How do you identify yourself in that career, and where's it going from here?
Um, so in within my career, I am a certified professional midwife.
Yeah.
I ended up becoming a midwife, and
Explain what a midwife is for, like, I know I have an idea, but for everyone else as well, like what is it exactly?
yeah, no, for sure. So, a midwife is a medical professional that who specializes in pregnancy and childbirth and reproductive health, depending on the scope of the midwife. And so, some midwives work in the hospital setting, and some midwives work outside of the hospital. A midwife is is basically able to do similar care to an OBGYN. Usually women go to an OBGYN because that's what they've been taught. But the difference is that midwives are usually trained in normal physiological birth versus OBs are a little way more medical in a lot of cases. So that's what a midwife does.
Okay. And so, as a certified midwife right now and getting into that reproductive space, like what else do you do, or what brings you joy in this career? Speak to all those things that make it yours.
Yeah, no, definitely. So what brings me joy in my career? Well, first and foremost, I love working with pregnant women. Like that brings me a lot of joy to do that, and the birth and catching babies is just it never gets old. Like no matter how many times I've seen a birth, it never gets old.
That's awesome.
And so it's really like great, right, to be at a profession where even though it's the same outcome, it's such every journey there is so different. Every person that's pregnant, every woman that gives birth has a different labor and a different story and different things that come up. um Also, what I do is that I actually work at a charter school as a family engagement coordinator. And that is kind of like an offshoot of some of the work that I do. It's really for me, it's a for right now type of thing. And the reason why I took that job is because I was raised to be an activist in high school, and so I feel that like and every opportunity that I'm able to work with the community, and this is a charter school that's in the South Bronx, every time I'm able to work with my community, I try to take it, even if it's not necessarily on my path. So I do that as well. And I speak on panel discussions about my work and about, Black and Latina women's health. And that's my focus, Black and Latina women's health. And I've given presentations at colleges and universities, and I've written a couple of articles for for the topic, about the topic of midwifery and reproductive health for Black and Latina women. And I also, a lot of the work that I do in New York City, right now in New York State, I can't practice because there's no path to licensure. So I haven't been practicing midwifery lately. And that's kind of not completely true because of the pandemic, I actually got asked to help support the midwives who are in the birthing center here in New York City. So I have been able to go to births and be in the room and assist, which is just as awesome as being the person that catches. And lastly, I have gotten the privilege to be able to work with the Department of Health in some of like their work around ending maternal mortality and morbidity here in New York City. The rate of mortality for Black women in New York City is right now, I think it's 8 times more likely than a white woman. So even though it's heavy work, right? Because I could see the reaction on your face. It is heavy work. It fills my life with purpose to know that I'm helping to reduce people's suffering. And that's all I could ever really hope for.
Yeah, I mean, how you capture that is really beautiful. Like, it's impactful work, and even though it may be heavy and intense, and you might have some really long days, at the end of the day, you're helping family, you're helping women, you're helping vulnerable populations, disadvantaged people, low income people. I'm also from the Bronx, so I totally get it. I grew up in the projects. I remember my dad was always that person who was like, look, these people around, some people around here, you may see their eyes, and that means, potentially they're on drugs, and that, that's not the life they wanted to have or ever imagined to have, but that's the reality. Don't do drugs. And that was always like the thing that I remember about growing up, at least in that part of the Bronx. So I totally get you. The fact that you're able to help people now in those ways, right? Especially for Latinx and Black people, and everything you're saying.
If I can, just to bring it back to New Paltz.
Yeah.
So like what you described is, very common to be told to children or people that are growing up, and obviously, what parent wants their child to be addicted to substances. But something that one of the biggest reasons why I find the education that I got at New Paltz valuable is that in the Black Studies department, it helped me to go from like shaming those people to understanding the context as to why people, Black and Latino people, are exposed to substances, and so we look at the addiction and we look at the addict, but we don't look at the why, right? And so something that is easy to do, especially if you never leave New York City. As you can clearly hear that I am in New York City with a freaking car alarm going off.
Love it.
Is that if you don't never leave your block, or you never leave where you are, you're never able to like even like hear some of this, right? And so even I have to challenge my biases because of the work that I'm doing. Like I can't even be like those people or that group of people because they are me, I am them. So that's one of the best things that I got to learn, is to have like context to understand why we are the way we are. Like we say in Spanish, por eso que estamos como estamos, right? That's why we are where we are, type of thing.
I love that. I love that concept. And you're so right. Like growing up, I remember him saying that, and like, that's like something that I have to unlearn, to your point. And in college, just like you at New Paltz, I had an opportunity to write a paper about how images shape policy. And it was called Picture Culture. And I ended up, my like term paper to end the year was about how images of drug addiction in Puerto Rico shape policy, or rather not shape policy, like due to their government and the way the media is run there and stuff. And so I ended up talking about how, like, at the end of the day, people who have a drug addiction, that's a disease, and at the end of the day they're still human, and they don't need prison. They need rehab. They need reform. So I totally get you on that.
Well, I know we could go so many different directions, but I
Yes,
really
definitely.
want to speak a little bit about the communications department in New Paltz, because
Sure.
I'm sure that it sounds like you're also a product of the communications
Yeah,
department.
yeah. I was in journalism and Spanish as well.
Yeah, and so to your point of what you're speaking about, um, even though I didn't go into media afterward and with a degree in television and radio productions, I do see how the skills that I learned in presenting information has been valuable in every job that I've gotten and even in my own personal work. Like, yes, it's great to know how to write the information, but how do you present it? How do people receive it? And then what is the psychology behind it? That's why I tell even folks that I work with, and like teenagers that I've worked with, like I went to college and college was really more of exposing me to the world so that I knew what direction to go in, as opposed to like this is going to be a terminal degree that I'm gonna go into something for the rest of my life. And don't get me wrong, some people go into finance and that's what they're gonna do, and people go and they study and be a teacher at New Paltz and early ed, and that's what they go on to do. But that's why I chose liberal arts, because I had an idea of what I wanted to do, and I still feel like I got a great education, even if I didn't necessarily go into the communications field.
Absolutely. My dad always tells me at the end of the day, you have a degree. You could use it how you want, but nobody could take that education away from you. And the fact that you're able to pivot and figure out ways to use it in different spaces to help different communities is why liberal arts is so cool, because you have the ability, and the creativity to even think that way, right? Think comprehensively and think, with an interdisciplinary lens. And for that reason, look at everything you've accomplished thus far, right? And it's not over. It's still going. This, if anything, this is like many people say, it's only the beginning when you have all these skill sets and this vision. So that's really cool. And I have another question though. I know you're also an author and you haven't spoken about that yet. So from one writer to another, like what's that about? Please talk to us.
Oh my God. So
I love how humble you
it's
are
kind
right
of
now. You're like, should I even say this?
no. It's because I know what your last question is, and my book is actually connected to your last question. So,
Copy.
so I don't know if you want me to talk about it now as an end,
No,
because
no, yeah, just go for it. Go for it.
all right, great. So all right, so I got to tell a story, obviously, to tell you about this book. So in New Paltz, all right, word. So I go to the Black Studies department and I pledge for Mu Sigma Upsilon Sorority Incorporated. I'm actually one of the founding sisters that helped to establish the chapter in New Paltz.
Amazing.
And so between, I actually pledged for my sorority second semester freshman year. So I didn't become a Black Studies major until after I pledged. And the reason for that is because as a multicultural sorority, we were encouraged to explore our cultures. And as you probably know from having been on campus, when people are pledging, they usually are not able to get their hair done and all these other things. So it was the first time in my life that I had gone that long without relaxing my hair. And so during that time, I got exposed to a sister from another campus who had a beautiful afro. And so like with the combination of that and then learning about the Dominican culture and anti-Haitianism, I finally was like, wow, I'm learning something about myself that maybe I was too scared or didn't know how to access, which is embracing my Blackness as a Black Dominican woman. So I became a Black Studies major and I embraced my Blackness, and like I cut my hair, like I haven't relaxed my hair in gotten like over a decade, and I never planned to or whatever. And so I had gotten that part down. But then towards the end of my college career, so like in 2007, actually no, wait, let me go back. I ended up meeting Denise Oliver Velez in her cultural anthropology class.
Okay.
And the minute that I met her, it was like that's my favorite teacher of my whole entire college career. I felt connected to her because she saw the journey that I was on, and she was able to talk to me about it, because at that point in 2007, the word Afro-Latina was not the buzzword that it is now. Right. And so it's not like I had ever heard it at any point until I got to college. And so I met her, and like, I spent a lot of time connecting with her, and she, helped me understand a lot. But it wasn't until I took her class towards the end of the college career of Women in the Caribbean that we had a class called Latinegras, and it was an article called Latinegras. And when I read that article, I was like, oh my God, this is me. Like, this is me. Like, this woman in this paper is describing me, like what I am. And so I ended up writing my final paper in that class on the Afro-Latina identity. And when I was doing the research on that paper, I realized that most of the material that was available about Afro-Latinidad was either things that I had to pull together around race theory in the Caribbean, or it was written by men. There was no book at the time that I was aware of that I could find. And that we got JSTOR. So if I can't find it on JSTOR, where the heck in the world is it, type of thing. So I remember handing in the paper and saying, there's no one has written a book about the Afro-Latina experience. I'm gonna write it.
I love that.
And so that's exactly what I did. What I did is I took my final paper and I published it as a book. But what I did is that I picked out the most important parts of the paper that I thought were the most important. And then I told my life story and I added in poetry. So it was like me talking about how I was through childhood up until like my early 20s, and then information about the Afro-Latina identity. So I ended up publishing that book in 2008, 2009.
Wonderful. So where can we get that book? Shameless plug.
Well, you can get the book on Amazon. Or that's the easiest place to get it. It's called Hija de mi Madre. It is written in English. It's just that's what the title of the book had to be.
Okay.
So
it is
English, yeah.
Awesome. Well, Amazon. We also get it at potentially like a local bookstore or on your Instagram somewhere?
You could probably get it on my website, which is thesewatersrundeep.com.
Okay, amazing. Thank you. Because for whoever, not to say Amazon is great, but like some people may not want to, type Amazon right now. So awesome. Well, then to all that explanation about your book is wonderful. Like, I love how you use your New Paltz experience and all these conversations that happen inspired that book. Something similar happened to me, but in terms of an article, conversations I've had about this idea about reclaiming Spanish and wanting to learn Spanish again, led to publication and led to like just wanting to know more about why people lose languages when they come to the US, which is a whole other story. But I love this idea about identity. And so my last question to you is then, with all this in mind about your New Paltz experience and your life now, who, I know you mentioned it before, but like, who do you want to give a shout out to and why from New Paltz?
Okay. There's so many people I could shout out though, but if I had to pick one person from New Paltz, it would be Denise Oliver Velez. I'm not sure if she still works at New Paltz, but the reason I want to shout her out is because she was the realest and most hilarious professor that I had. And she's just supported my journey in embracing my Afro-Latinidad, especially because at the time it was either you're black or white or you're Latino. And hearing the information that she was able to share in the class, and then being able to speak to her after class and in between classes, like she made herself available in a way that perhaps she didn't really have to. And even after college, I still remained in communication with her. I mean, as we've gotten older, you know, communication changes, but I always hold a special place in my heart for Denise Oliver Velez. She's the best.
Amazing. Well, I hope you're out there, Professor. I really do hope you're hearing this message. But thank you, Carmen, so much. Like, this story was awesome. I know we could obviously keep it going, but I want you to know that, like, this story, your time is appreciated. And for everyone out there, it's been a pleasure. This is Carmen Mojica, alumna of 2007.
Thank you.
Okay. My pleasure.